Alright, well, I'm going to go over a quick overview of the field uniforms used by the United States Army from about 1936 up until about 1945. All the items are displayed on original World War II blankets. As I thought, well, that looks a lot better than my garage floor with oil stains on it. So we're going to start up here with the first uniform. Bit of information about how the Army identified items by the Quartermaster Department. It was usually with the description of the item with the letter M followed by the year it was adopted. So in this particular case, we have a coat. It's made of wool, has brass buttons. It was referred to as a service coat. This particular uniform was adopted by the United States Army in 1936. It was intended to be a winter uniform as well as one in garrison. So what does that mean? So if you were a clerk and you had to sit there hitting your typewriter, odds are pretty good you wore this jacket. With the jacket would have been a wool flannel shirt, and you would have had this black tie underneath it. It had a pair of wool pants, the same color as the jacket, with a pair of brown shoes, low quarters. We'll go into that in detail if I have time permits later. So, the hat that went with this uniform was referred to as a garrison cap. This particular hat right here, it's made of wool. It has a leather brim, a leather strap, and this particular hat was made right here in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, of all the different pieces of headgear, that's the military term for a hat, that was used by the United States Army during World War II, this one happens to be my favorite. So, and it's my size, so let's see what it looks like. Sharp piece of headgear. So, by about 1940, the United States Army realized that this wasn't really practical as a winter uniform. That uniform over here would have had a leather belt that went with it, and it would have been attached to this brass piece right here. So they later decided to no longer have the belt, and they went with this particular uniform right here. They also decided to go ahead and go from the black color tie to a khaki tie. Uniform still would have had the wool flannel shirt. The pants would have been the same color of this jacket. One of the differences they made was the hat you wore. They went to something that's called a side cap. Made of wool, and as you can see, same color as the uniform. What was distinctive about the caps is that they had a color to it that indicated your branch service. For example, blue would indicate infantry. There were two styles of the cap. This is the one that you would have been issued. Notice how it's a little bit round. There was also another style of cap that if you wanted to, you could purchase, and it was more squared. The difference between the two caps, besides the design, is that the one that you were issued to didn't have any lining in it. The other caps, which were referred to as private purchase, because you purchased them off base, usually from a tailor, had a satin line in them, as well as a leather band. This one happens to fit me perfectly, so let's see what this looks like. Oh, that's how you adjusted the hat, by the way. You took 2 fingers above your eyebrow, canted it a little bit, and that's how you adjusted the cover. Once again, cover is the military term for a hat. So, let's go over here. Realizing that this uniform really wasn't practical, The United States Army started to go to a system where you would layer your uniforms. So as it got colder, you put things on, and as it got warmer, you took it off. So about 1940-41, they came up with this jacket. Lightweight cotton. The inside of it had a light wool lining, as well as inside the sleeves. Became apparent by about 1942 that due to the weight of the cotton, in addition to your wool shirt and potentially a sweater, didn't really work that well. So the Army, in the fall of 1942, decided to go what they wanted to call a universal uniform pattern. So they came up with this over here. This particular jacket is referred to as an M1943 jacket, made of cotton, had 4 pockets to it, and once again, it was designed to be used with layering. So you had this, I had a pair of trousers, also the same material, with pockets similar to the pants I'm wearing right now. One of the distinctive features of this jacket was that they had this hood, also made of cotton, that could be buttoned into the collar of this, so that you could pull it over your helmet, provide additional protection. Come over here real quick. Sorry. Generals can design just about every uniform they would like. And one general who really liked the uniform that was used by the British Army during World War II was General Eisenhower from his time in Europe. And there was a particular uniform item the British Army had, they called it a battle dress. And one of the distinctive features of it, when you compare this jacket to the other two I showed you, is it broke about your waist. So we're also realizing that, the Army wanted to go to the layering concept. In the fall of 1944, the United States government actually contracted with the British to start making a uniform based on their battle dress. It was designed, the intention of it was that, and I'm going to lay it on top of this so you can see it. The idea was that you'd wear this cotton jacket with that underneath it. By the time that this was adopted by the United States Army, it didn't really make it to soldiers in Western Europe until the spring of 1945. By the time the war ended, May 1945, when they started to return back to the United States, this was a jacket that replaced the two over here. The Eisenhower jacket. I'm not really going to have the time to go into all the different patches and devices in all these jackets. I do want to point out that for the enlisted rank insignia, initially around 1936, it was made of wool, dark blue with grain. Later, around 1941, 42, excuse me for crawling, they went to the wool and blue, but they embroidered it in grain. By 1943, they went to this design here, where it was all basically a piece of cotton fabric. It was embroidered. Once again, excuse me for crawling. So now we're going to come up to some of the, this cap. With the introduction of the M1943 jacket, it was determined that a more efficient cap was needed. This one was developed. It has a flap with a light wool piece to it and was designed to be worn two ways. One was, sorry, it doesn't really fit as a cap. However, with cold weather, there's a piece on the inside that you could fold down, and where you wore it, it would cover your ears, providing additional warmth. Once again, keeping the concept of these two items right here. We're now going to come up to some of the winter uniforms. That being over here, the wool overcoat. As you can probably notice, the color is very similar to the blankets. It's made of extremely heavy wool, has brass buttons, and once again, this was designed for winter use. By about 1942, to conserve metal, the jacket, the overcoat was made with plastic buttons. Once again, these were intended to be worn when you're back in the United States. However, by the time of the Battle of Bulge in December 1944, these were then issued to United States soldiers in Europe as winter combat uniforms. One other item I'd like to go over is this. It's called a Mackinaw coat. It's based on a design that was used by the United States Army in World War I. It's made of a heavy duct canvas. It is lined with blanket wool. The weight of this wool is the same as these World War II blankets I have right here. The entire inside of the coat was all lined with blanket wool. Also, the sleeves, all the way down to the cuff, were lined with the wool. This particular coat was really intended to be used by officers as well as people who operated vehicles, like someone who drove a Jeep or a truck, because it broke right about here. So it was never really intended to be as a combat uniform, but it was issued as such. I have an interest in items from St. Louis, Missouri during World War II. What I really like about this particular coat is at one point in time, it was used by someone after May of 1945 who worked at a Texaco gas station in St. Louis, Missouri. So, that's a quick overview of the winter uniforms used by the United States Army between about 1936 and about 1945. So, now I'm going to get ready to lay out the shirts and the pants that went along with all those uniforms.